Welcome to OZChris vs. Marvel Comics for week 4 of July, here with reviews on Amazing Spider-Man number 26, House of X number 1, Swordmaster number 1, and Web of Venom Funeral Pyre number 1. Well, it's a one-shot, but you know how they are. So, starting off with ASM, toe-to-toe with the foes. Pretty sure I'm the only one not cheating. Exactly. Written by Nick Spencer, art by Kev Walker, coloring by Laura Martin, the cover by Ryan Otley and Nathan Fairbairn. So, Spidey is spending his time with Boomerang, his unlikely roommate and now friend, recounting their adventures in ASM together. Well, the most recent adventures together, as the new Electro has been recruited by the Beetle to join the Syndicate, this female-only organization that want to make their name within the underworld of crime. Pretty much they're sick of the other organizations, and they're just like, well, it's our shot. It's our turn to make our mark, to make out a name for ourselves. So they're able to convince Electro to join by mentioning the fact that their first target is someone that's screwed them over before, which is Boomerang. And I'll leave it there. It was a nice, easy, simple start to the story arc. So ratings, story, I'm going to give it a 3.5 out of 5. Above average, almost good. Overall, it was okay. The art and the coloring, I'm going to give it I'll give it a 4 out of 5. I did like the art and coloring here. So there's a few times where the faces were really kind of a bit off, but overall the art and coloring was good. The cover itself, I'm going to give it a 3.5 out of 5. I think the art and coloring is good on it, but this has nothing to do with the interior. It has nothing to do with the story. Spider-Man doesn't come face to face with the superior foes. It really doesn't. Like, literally only two of them appear in there. That's Boomerang and Beetle. So, on to House of X number 1, the start of Hickman's reign on X-Men. So, House of X number 1, written by Jonathan Hickman, the art by Pepe Larraz, coloring by Marte Gracia, and the cover by Larraz and Gracia. So, Professor X has created a new sovereign nation for all mutants, Krakoa, and after 5 months, Xavier has promised to aid humanity, giving them certain drugs that will benefit them, drugs and pills that will benefit them, like prolonging life, curing diseases, all of that. His conditions are that the world leaders will accept Krakoa as a sovereign nation, and that's the only thing they will accept, is that they get to be their own nation. So a few leaders and ambassadors, representatives meet at one of their sites. They are greeted by Ambassador Magneto, who gives them the tour of Krakoa, and we see certain parts, how various other mutants or X-Men working within Krakoa, and also we also have how non-mutants, how the rest of the world is kind of responding to this. So an organization called OZChris, which is a combination of they explain it, a combination of AIM, Shield, Strike, Sword, Alpha Flight, Hammer, Armor, and Hydra, or at least using like the assets of them, working together to build a defense in case mutant kind attacks. So in the off chance that this is actually something terrible that's going to happen, they've created a giant Sentinel like satellite as a weapon, and it's assumed they're going to build more as well as a fail-safe. So, and then also when the Fantastic Four try to stop Sabretooth, who Mystique and Toad have been stealing stuff from Damage Control, They're greeted by Cyclops, who just tells them, okay, well, you know, if you're not gonna give him amnesty, that's fine. Well, we'll come back for him for later. But he kind of gives off like a slight threat. It's just like, you know, please greet your son for me, because, you know, he's a mutant. And tell him when he's ready, he has family on Krakoa waiting for him. So we'll leave it there. So story, I'm gonna give this a 4 out of 5. I think this is honestly, I thought this was a really great start to this series. Gives you a lot of questions. It can be confusing, but I think it's confusing in a way that it wants to make you read more. Like for me, I want to know what's going on, because it's just like, why is it just suddenly a fact that Xavier is alive? Because I know Xavier came back in Phantom X's body, but except for Psylocke, he erased everyone's memory of the fact that he came back. So you see Xavier creating mutants here, and then 5 months later, there's a new mutant society. They have their own land, and like all of the mutants seem to be working together. So there's something has happened. We don't have answers to it, because I mean, it's the first issue. Are they going to do you really think Hickman is going to tell you everything in the first issue? No, it's 6 issues long, and then there's also the Powers of X stuff. So it gives you some very confusing questions, and at least for me, wants to make me read more to find out. Like, I really need those answers. I need to know what the hell is going on. Why is like every mutant now like friendly with each other? Xavier's like the figurehead leader of all of them, and they want their own society, but there is something going on in the background. There is something more to this, given that there is a 5-month gap between Xavier which seems to be creating mutants, to there's now this whole mutant society and nation wanting sovereignty and just to be accepted. So I think if that's what Hickman wanted, if he wanted people to be confused and want to read more, he did a very good job of that. But on the other side, I can see if that could turn people off as well, and some people won't like that. So that's understandable. Some people don't like that. I'm okay with it. Like I said, it makes me want to read more, but I know some people aren't going to enjoy that or like that. So, yeah, you do you, pretty much. Like what you want to like. If you thought it wasn't good, that's okay. It doesn't really affect me, whatever. But this was definitely a very interesting, confusing, great start to this miniseries. The art and the coloring, I'm going to give a 4 out of 5 as well. Art and coloring was great, really good. The cover itself, I'm going to give a 4 out of 5 as well. Good art, good coloring. Technically all 5 of these characters who appear, but really Magneto's the only one that gets a lot of focus within this, serving as the ambassador and giving the representatives their terms, almost like threatening them in a way. Just pretty much like almost threatening them if they don't kind of accept their terms or try to change them in a way. So I'm definitely going to see how this goes from now on. I'll definitely be picking up the rest of House of X to see how it goes, and Powers of X as well, and let you guys know what's going on with it. So on to Swordmaster number 1. This is the second of those Chinese English adaptation comics. So written by Xu Zhu. I'm going to butcher names, I'm sorry. Art by Gunji. Then you have the Greg Pak story written by Greg Pak, and the art by Ario Anindito. Oh god, names. And coloring by Rachel Rosenberg. So Lin Lei wakes up from a dream where his father saves him from the god of war, Chiyo. Not Kratos, Chiyo. Chiyo, the god of war. And we learn a bit about Lin Lei, Swordmaster. His father went missing after finding this magical sword which he uses, and using that sword, he becomes the Swordmaster, and he's trying to locate where his father is. His friend Cheng, or I'm going to assume that's how it's pronounced. Chang finds a lead to where his to people who might know where his father is. Lin goes to question that lead. So that, and I'll leave it there. So that was the main first story. The second story, which takes place in New York, takes place after the events of the New Agents of Atlas miniseries during War of the Realms. Lin is still trying to find his father, but he encounters Shang-Chi, who offers to train him to hone in his skills with his weapons, etc. A nice, simple little story. So, for the main story, the main story of Swordmaster, I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. Really interesting. What it did better than Arrow was actually give us a backstory to the main protagonist. Not in just the summary, like the actual story itself, like his backstory. Father went missing after finding the sword. Lin gains possession of the sword, uses it as Swordmaster, and he's trying to find his father, and he's being plagued by dreams of being attacked by the God of War. So we already know quite a bit about Lin Lei, and also how a little bit of how was I going to say this? He's able to work around and kind of with like very like obvious sketchy kind of thugs in order to get what he wants. Not in a particularly bit of a bad way. I don't know where I was going with that, but you get quite a lot from like who Lin Lei is as a person and his backstory and what the story of this series is going to be from the get-go. So yeah, definitely 4 out of 5 for the story. The art and coloring for that, I'm going to give it a 4.5 out of 5. I think the art and coloring in this was so goddamn amazing. These first few pages of his nightmare of being attacked by the God of War, just the art and coloring that is so goddamn good. And then overall the art and coloring was really good. And the cover itself, I'm gonna give it a 4.5 out of 5. That this cover is such an amazing cover, despite the fact this has nothing to do with with what's going on in the story. It really does it, unfortunately, but it is a great looking cover. The Greg Pak stuff story, I'll give it a 3.5 out of 5, above average. The art and coloring, I'll give that a 3.5 out of 5 for that. At least this side story that Park is doing actually connects to the main story. Lin is still looking for his father in this story, and I'm going to spoil it a little bit at the end, but Ares, the God of War, is in this, and at the start you had Lin dreaming of being attacked by a Chinese God of War, so at least in two different ways connects to the main story, much more than the Arrow one, which is served as a origin story for a different character. So, on to Web of Venom Funeral Pyre, written by Cullen Bunn, art by Joshua Cassara and Alberto Albuquerque, coloring by J. David Ramos, the cover by Declan Shalvey. So, Andy Benton, who was Mania, is suffering nightmares of her symbiote trying to consume or possess her again. She's trying to live out her normal life after the events of Venom Inc., when Mania was taken from her by Lee Price, who was Venom for a while before Eddie became Venom again. So she's trying to the best of her ability, live a normal life, but she's constantly plagued by these nightmares of the Mania symbiote attacking people she knows or trying to attack her. But then when she returns home, she finds her aunt dead and killed by Carnage. Carnage is coming after her, given her connection, having been Mania, having been a symbiote user. So Despite not having a symbiote to use to fight off against Carnage, she summons the monsters of evil, considering she still has the hell mark on her. I think it was called hell mark or devil mark. Can't remember what it was, but she still has that mark and is able to summon them to fight Carnage, and we'll leave that there. We'll definitely leave that there. So story, I'll give it a 3 out of 5. It was average. It was an okay story. The art and the coloring, I'll give that a 3 out of 5 as well. Average. I will say just this first page though, I really like the art and coloring in this, but the rest was kind of just okay. The cover itself, I'm going to give a 3 out of 5. It's okay. Okay, average looking cover. So that is it for those 4. Thank you all for watching. If you're new to the channel, subscribe, hit the notification bell, leave a like if you like this video, and I will see you all next time.